Hello, I'm Jeff Johnston. Welcome to the Living Undeterred podcast. I have an awesome guest today. I'm super excited to speak with him about a lot of things. He has a very good background in the financial business, which we're going to spend some time talking about investments and financial planning and investing versus gambling. And his niche is the millennial generation. So with that, I'm going to, and I do apologize in advance here if I hack this up. I've been rehearsing prior to the show, but it's Jovica Djurdjevic.
Perfect.
I got it right?
Yeah,
all right.
good.
We don't have
really
to edit
job.
this or any.
No, I don't think so. That'd be great.
And you explained to me what that means in Serbian. So help my listeners understand, or my followers, what your name actually means when you converted it over to, say,
When I transliterated it.
There you go.
Yeah, so I'll give it a 10,000-foot view of my background and who I am. So again, Jovica Djurdjevic, which I promise is a real name. I was telling you earlier that my parents actually used to make fun of people who gave their kids creative names. They were like stupid hippies. So they gave me one of the most like basic pumpkin spice latte Serbian names ever, which is Jovica is Johnny. It's the equivalent of it. And Djurdjevic means son of, like George son. So it's like the most basic name ever. And they never thought we'd end up out of what was Yugoslavia at the time. And then in the 90s, wars happened. We ended up being refugees. And we came to the States when I was 10. And they were like, cool, just in time for middle school. Nice and awkward, kid. You'll figure it out. so it's it was interesting. It was like I said, we came to the States when I was 10. We lived in the projects in North Memphis, in the ghetto, which is kind of how refugees get placed all across the country. My parents worked really hard, built a wonderful life for themselves, educated myself and my sister. I went to college in Knoxville at the University of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Graduated from that, got into the financial world, particularly financial advising, spent a decade in that, left that last year, went into the employee benefits space, live in Nashville with my wife, Tamara, and our dog Harlem. And just loving life. I started the way you and I actually got connected is I started a podcast called Millennial Manhood 3 years ago. And it's 111 episodes deep at this point, and it's been one of the most satisfying passion projects I've ever done. So that's the,
you do a
that's the
super
10,000
job.
foot view.
You do a great job. I've watched a number of your shows and kind of I went into it to do my vetting process, as you did with me to be on your show. And as I got into it, I kind of forgot I was actually researching you because I was so interested in your conversations. I'm like 2 shows into it going, this guy's got a really good podcast. So, I'm very new into the podcast world and basically just started even the Living Undeterred project or mindset in January. So I'm a real newbie, but man, I've run into a lot of people like you and other people that have some very successful podcasts out there. And I would put yours up there with the flow, the content, the way you direct it, stuff that I'm trying to learn from, as a newbie. But what would you think would be the primary reason I drug you on the Living Undeterred podcast? And by the way, this is the same question you asked me when I was on the Millennial Manhood show. Why do you think that I wanted to have you talk to my followers about living undeterred?
Wow, that's a good question. Why? I've had
you have a lot of time. Life. Yeah, I know you do.
I've had an interesting life, that's for sure. We've talked about this a little bit in my household in particular. I was the oldest son, oldest kid in general. And so we lived as refugees in Germany for 7 years. And basically, for folks who don't know, in Yugoslavia is the country where I was born. It doesn't exist anymore, particularly Bosnia, northeastern Bosnia on the border with Croatia. And during the 90s, Yugoslavia fell apart into a really, really, really bloody civil war. Horrible. Really, really just very disturbing. And my dad was not down with that. My dad's somebody I respect a lot. My dad has been an incredible influence on me. A fantastic father, not without his flaws, but a fantastic father. If I can be half as good of a dad as he was, I'd be incredibly happy. But my dad, Yeah, my dad had some paperwork forged and then snuck out of the country and hitchhiked 24 hours to Germany. Ended up in Germany, started working construction the next day to save up enough money to get my mom, myself, and my grandma out. My grandfather stayed behind. He was conscripted into the military where he was almost killed. And then my dad snuck him out about 8 months later. How
old was your dad this time?
31.
Okay. Wow.
So, we lived in Germany for 7 years. The first several years on the good grace of other people, in basements and trailers, save up.
Do you remember a lot of it?
Some of it, yeah. I remember playing cards in the trailer with my grandpa, and scratching lottery tickets for fun. The problem was, when you're a refugee, nobody will give you an apartment. You can't sign a lease. You can get kicked out tomorrow.
Right.
So my parents have, my dad tells me, it's like, I had tens of thousands of marks, which was the currency in Germany, like in cash, but I can't get anybody to freaking, let me live somewhere until my dad's boss actually signed the lease on our first place, because he was a very well-respected member of that community. Yeah. A local German man. So we lived there for 7 years. I go to kindergarten through fourth grade in Germany. And then the German government kicks all refugees out. Says, we don't give a shit where you go, but you got it. Sorry if I can't cuss on your podcast.
You're. It's highly encouraged that you cuss on my podcast.
Oh, okay. Well, the German government said, we don't give a shit where you go. You just got to get the hell out of here. Yeah. So my parents said, well, we don't really want to go back to Bosnia because there's no future for our children there. Mm-hmm. So we applied everywhere: the United States, Canada, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. And honestly, the purpose of all the interviews, my mom and dad wanted to fail all of them. The German government couldn't kick you out as long as you were applying for places. Oh, so they wanted to keep failing them until they kicked out everybody, and then they were just going to let the remainder stay.
So they wanted to stay in Germany.
Yeah, they had no interest. I mean, you don't want to start your life over again at 40. Start a new language. None of us spoke English. None of us knew anything about American culture besides what we saw on TV. Wow. So, to me, America was Eddie Murphy and The Lion King. So
and it's still not that, huh?
Yeah, right. But the problem with that plan was we got accepted by every single interview. We were like,
did you really? Did you really?
Yeah. We just kept getting them over and over. And my mom and dad were like, shit, we have to go now. So
not another one.
Yeah. So their reasoning was, well, the United States is at the top. So if I'm going to go somewhere and fail potentially, I might as well fail at the damn top. So let's go to America. So that's how we ended up in America. So that's probably why you asked me to come on the podcast. It's been one hell of a ride. And
that's funny because it's what happened after all that is what I know mostly about you. Our conversation we had on the phone, and then the chance to be on your awesome podcast, and so so you were 10, you said, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So how long did it take you to settle into the culture?
Oh, as a 10-year-old, I was fluent in 4 months. I got kicked out of ESL. So, yeah, I was. It's funny. It's really interesting. I've talked to a lot of people about this. So we got placed in Memphis, in North Memphis in particular. I was one of like 2 white kids in my whole school, and I don't speak English. Everybody else was either African American, which was the overwhelming majority, Hispanic, or Asian. So my first interaction really with American culture was Black American culture.
Sure.
And that was the first that's the culture I learned English in. That was the first culture that accepted me.
Interesting.
It was really interesting once we moved out of that part of town and we moved into the suburbs. And I started going to a predominantly white school. I realized there's like different levels of America. Yeah. So it's been always interesting. A lot of people that I've talked to that know me personally say one of my superpowers is being able to be a chameleon in different communities.
Well, you had to be sometimes, probably.
Yeah, you just get exposed to it.
Survival, yeah.
Yeah, and you just learn about different. It's helped me amplify different aspects of my personality over the years to connect with people more easily, for sure.
So, for your parents, was America what they envisioned?
In a lot of ways, it was better. My dad's a smart guy. He didn't think America was Hollywood.
Yeah.
America's afforded them a lot of opportunities that they, for example, did not have in Germany. I know for a fact that they miss being amongst their own culture.
I bet.
But they're very happy that we came to America because, again, of the opportunities that it provided for myself and my sister, for sure.
Did your sister adapt as quickly as you did?
Yeah, she was 5. I mean, you might as well.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You know, she was born in Germany. But I remember vividly, I've talked about this on my podcast before. I remember vividly my dad sat me down when we came to America and he said, hey, look, kid, I've done everything and sacrificed everything along with your mom to get you here. No one cares about us. I mean, my dad was working for $7.25 an hour. Yeah. He's a grown man with a family. He said, no one cares about us. It's up to you and what you do that's going to dictate the next 10 generations of our family. Don't fuck this up.
Absolutely. That's very interesting that you said that because I use that phrase. I use this phrase in my book where I say to myself when I had to tell my boys that their brother died was I had one chance to F this up. And that's what I told myself. I had one chance. I'm not going to get a redo to have an opportunity to present this in a positive, somehow find something good out of dying. I had to as a dad, you know, I had to. And you're in the same way as your dad said to you, you know, son, we're not going to get second chance. You know, you're here, you got one chance to F this up. And I think that's just a really interesting way to look at challenges and opportunities in life, you know.
Very much so.
Yeah, because you can use that thought process in about anything, you know.
Yeah, it kept me out of trouble for sure.
Right.
I was a popular kid in school. I mean, I wasn't like the star quarterback, but I had plenty of friends. People knew who I enjoyed high school. I really enjoyed college. But I didn't drink in high school. Not because I had some objection to it per se. I just thought it was stupid.
Yeah.
Like, it just didn't make sense to me. I was like, why would I do this? This doesn't make any sense. There's nothing good that can come with it. I went to the University of Tennessee. So I did have a good time at college.
I was just going to transition. I was going to transition into that. At some point, you probably enjoyed the American beverage or two, you know.
Yeah, but it was a different environment. I could walk from the bar to my apartment.
Right.
The risks were completely different.
Right.
Whereas, okay, we're in a field in the middle of nowhere in Memphis, and we're going to drink out of this keg, and then I'm going to drive home. That sounds really dumb.
Right. Right.
You know, it was again, it wasn't an inherent, like, I don't like drinking. It was this just doesn't make sense right now. Yeah.
Did you ever have a problem with alcohol?
Mm-mm. I know you did, but I'm not like my vice. If I look, I don't have a problem with drinking. I don't have a problem with drugs. I was pretty self-controlled around women. I was like, the one thing that could get out of hand if I let it, I love to gamble.
Me too, man.
Yeah, I love the competition of gambling.
Me too.
I have to go in with a budget, cash. That's it. Because I'll sit at a blackjack table for 6 hours.
You and I have so much in common, man. So much in common because I read in my book about, and as we're financial professionals, you and I, to confess that you have a gambling problem doesn't look good on a U4 or as an outside business activity, you know.
Yeah.
But at this point in my career, you know, I'm not as active seeing clients individually. I have no problem talking about it because there's a lot of us out there that are wearing the mask of one thing, but underneath we're doing something different. But I was a functional gambler, probably like you were too. I mean, I wasn't like stealing from the business or, you know, cashing in my IRA or something. I mean, I gambled. Maybe you weren't that way, but I never really gambled with money that I didn't have, you know.
No, and I never even got to having a problem. I was just very aware that it would become a problem if I let it.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does.
When I turned 21, my dad took me to the casino, gave me $100 and made me blow it. Like I couldn't get up until it was all blown. And then he sat me down and he said, there are people who do this every single Friday when they get their paycheck and their kids go hungry.
Your dad sounds like a very interesting man.
Very interesting man. Yeah. just my whole family is very interesting in a lot of ways. But my dad has always been very big on teaching lessons in a practical manner that stuck.
Since we opened up the gambling Pandora's box here, let's talk about what I see as a problem in society today, and that's the inability of, and we'll say the millennials, because I have many conversations with millennials, and millennials are basically what, 25 to 41, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that encompasses just kids just out of college.
Yep.
I graduated college, I think, what was I, 24 maybe, something like that. And then having their first, property, whether it's renting or owning, and then their marriage and kids. So just that age. So people listening that don't know what the millennials are. This proliferation of the ability to invest, and then the industries like, the portals like Robinhood, and where they're making it, you buy a stock and balloons go off, or they have confetti coming down, and they're really visually turning it into a casino. And I don't think they do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I first saw that, I was just appalled. I was like, are you effing kidding me? I'm trying all my life here to teach the difference between gambling and investing. And the wholesale difference between a gambler and an investor, if there's one word that defines the difference, is time. That word encompasses the difference, because a gambler has no time. Everything has to be right now. They have to win all the money. They have to make up for losses. They don't have any time. Whereas an investor, you can buy a 40-unit rental property and hold it for 20 years, and you're going to do quite well. But millennials don't look at it as investing that way. Now it's so equivalent to, I'm going to buy a stock, but hey, I'm going to bet on the Lakers tonight on my gambling site. You and I didn't grow up in that world. Hell, I couldn't even buy a stock. We didn't have cell phones. So, I had to go call a broker or go talk to a stockbroker and buy a stock the old-fashioned way, Do
Order
you
ticket
see
and
this?
everything.
Yeah, exactly. Do you see this as an issue that the millennial generation needs to be aware of, I guess? Or do you think they are?
So that's an interesting thing, because, again, I spent 9 years. I guess I still technically have it. It's just not active. I had my 65, so I was a registered investment advisor. Fee for advising, fiduciary, all that. But, I think it's the financial services industry's fault that this situation has happened the way it's happened. Primarily due to the fact that I think there are so many conflicts of interest that are slowly eroding. But there's so many conflicts of interest that financial advisors face to where they do not have the public trust.
Yeah.
And 2008 and 2009 and then 2020, for example, did not help in that cause. Okay, so let's talk about Wall Street and let's talk about the hedge funds, which is different than like a Main Street advisor. But still, that's what people conflate it with. Okay, so when you win, you privatize the gains, but then when you lose, you socialize the losses. That's a problem. I don't trust you anymore. Okay?
Yeah.
When you go out and make a good deal and make $60 billion or whatever, you keep it all to yourself. When you bet on mortgage-backed securities that are dog crap, and because you paid off the rating agencies to rate them as higher than they are, now you want a tax bailout. And the millennials are a generation who graduated in 2009, roughly, and couldn't find a job. So why the hell would they go to a Merrill Lynch?
Good point.
So when Robinhood comes around and says democratizing investing, it was a genius business model. It is a genius business model. And in a lot of ways, I'm for the competition. Now, I agree with you on the turning it into gambling, like taking your life savings of what your parents gave you, or taking a HELOC on your house and putting it on GameStop. No, that's not a good idea.
But many did.
And now, me personally, the only investing in the market that I do is I sell options.
Yeah.
But I also have learned from hedge fund managers who sell options for hedge funds directly. I have calculated the risk and understand what I need to do.
Right.
I'm a big believer in real estate, huge believer in real estate. I'm a big believer in holding on to precious metals. I'm And I go out of my way to try to educate people and help them understand, like, hey, what can you get really good at? Now you can also, if you don't want to go down that route, go down the approach that I worked with hundreds of families over a decade is, let's create a diversified portfolio that's not going to keep you up at night. That hopefully is going to, that's going to create, because some people can't handle the perceived risk. It might not even be real risk. Like, and I'll give you this example. Let's say we're talking about a real estate property.
Right.
Let's say the worst case scenario is what? The market turns, the property goes down in value, and rents go down?
Right.
That's literally the worst case scenario. Okay. What's the best case scenario? Property value goes up, rents go up. Okay.
Right.
What are the odds of the worst case scenario happening versus the best case scenario happening versus something in the middle where it just slowly increases over time and you cover your debt obligation with the cash flow and have some extra money in your pocket?
Yeah.
Are they all equally likely?
Right.
No. You have to contextualize how much each risk from a probability standpoint.
It's a possibility versus probability.
Correct.
Right.
The most likely scenario is that middle, the thick part of the bell curve.
Right.
But some people can't contextualize that and they can't handle that risk. It gives them all the anxiety in the world. Yeah, like that's fine. You need to work with a professional who's going to control your behavior.
And that is where the industry is really getting good at, and that's behavioral finance. That's where and Daniel Crosby now is probably he's in my book. I interviewed him for my book because I have this concept called financial hoarding, where I met many clients that basically were addicted to the quantity elements of money, not the quality elements of it. So they were hoarding. And no different than you come in and see a hoarder's houses, and that's the way their financial head is when it comes with money. The relationship with money is very poor, just like a relationship with alcohol for an alcoholic. So I wrote about this concept with financial hoarding because now that I'm in the addiction world now because of my son and some of the issues I've had, that my calling is now more into that than it was setting up IRAs. I see a lot of similarities between people that I counseled as clients that basically had all the money in the world, but they hadn't flown cross country to see their grandkids because airline tickets were $300 one way.
Oh, the millionaire next door crap.
I'm like, dude, you just made $250,000 in your portfolio this year, and you're upset about the $50 fee I charge or $100 IRA fee, and you won't go see your children. What the hell am I making you any money for? You're not doing anything with it, and the average inheritance is spent in less than 2 years. So when you die, so is your money. So, what are you hoarding for? And that's where I was really interested. And then all of a sudden, my son dies, and I lose interest in the business, and now I'm kind of doing this. But I was going to ask you, or I guess one thing that I found out, and when I was going through this, struggling with dealing with questions people were asking me. We host a radio show here in Cedar Rapids. I think it's our 12th year of doing the Premier Investments of Iowa Financial Hour. It's every Tuesday night. It's a live call-in show. And we always get, topic-specific questions. And a while back, we had gold all the time. What do you think about gold? And these are setup questions, because they want me to answer so they can argue with me. So, what do you think about gold? And I said, I love gold. If I could have gold, I would have all of it. I love it. The question isn't what you should be asking me, is what you think about gold. It's how much should gold represent as a percentage of my overall investment net worth. That's the question. Yep. So 2 callers call in and you both own 50,000 of gold. That doesn't tell me squat. If one portfolio's 2 million, the other one's 100,000, well, one of you has got a big diversification problem. So I think, I saw in your profile, you have money and stoicism, which again makes you and me very, very, very similar because I love stoicism, the concept of reframing. So here is an opportunity where you and I as financial people, or now as dads, and we can reframe lots of things that are presented to us. And so when someone asks me, what do you think about Bitcoin? I reframe it back to them. Well, what percentage of it is your investment net worth? And I never answer their question.
Yeah.
Because it's an unanswerable question. What do I think about Bitcoin? I mean, seriously?
Well, and it's also, you want to talk about Stoicism and money, the concept of what even money is. What is money? Money is just a representation of value created in an economy. Well, what's the economy? Well, the economy is all the actions combined that all human beings in an environment take.
Right.
Like I hate when people say, well, it's just the economy. You dumbass. That's literally you and I.
Right.
Like in political arguments. I'm like, what kind of stupid, like who says something this dumb? So yeah, money. Yeah, we can, I mean, I'll let you take
See, when you get to be my age, you don't have political arguments at all. I
try to avoid them at all costs.
Oh, they're miserable. They're miserable.
Well, and I am so far out of the spectrum of what American politics is that I just don't have a home.
That's right. You are.
Yeah. So I'll take those tests, and I'm just so all over the place. And what the part that sucks is like you can take the test like I side with as a website. What people don't know is like in the top right corner, you can switch countries. And I'm always like in every country, I'm in like some random ass non-existent party to the side that has like 1% of the vote in parliament. And I'm like, I'm never going to be, just because I'm open to changing my views. Give me new evidence and I'll change my views.
Right.
And I don't let somebody else decide for me what to think because they have an R or a D next to their name.
Would you agree with the statistic I saw that the millennials are the most educated generation of all time, yet they are the most underprepared for retirement?
Oh, yeah.
I saw that statistic, and I had to ask you this because I know the millennial manhood is your niche.
Well, the two
is that a true statement?
The two go hand in hand. You're educated because the government made debt really easy, so colleges pumped up their costs, so it's eating up all your cash flow every month. So yeah, of course you're not planning for retirement when you can't freaking afford to even buy a house. I want you to think about this. I was 29 when my wife and I bought our house here in Nashville. We paid $360,000 for it. We paid $360,000 for our first house.
At 29.
Okay? At 29. And it's nice. I mean, people watching, I don't know if this is a video podcast, but like it's a nice place. We've got 4 bed, whatever.
Yeah.
New build. I'm refinancing it right now. Literally appraised for $450. September 2019 to now, $450. I made $90,000 in equity. Actually $100,000 because of down payment. In 15 months. How is another 29-year-old supposed to like come in and buy this off of me for $450?
Well, they can't.
Correct.
Well, if they can, they're going to have to come up with some creative financing. Yeah.
Correct. So, it goes deeper than that. Just from a conceptual standpoint. That we've eliminated the value of money, because it doesn't represent actual value being created in the economy. We've printed 40% of the entire U.S. dollar money supply in the history of the country in the last year. There's no value being created. We're just pumping crap out. Okay, well when you're doing that, that is legal theft because you're stealing from the savers. You're stealing from people who have built up assets by devaluing their assets without their permission.
So is that where you see, and maybe this is a whole different, as I say, a whole different seminar, but the cryptocurrency craze, I guess, and again, it's not a fad. I don't think they're going away. No,
the technology's incredible.
You know it better than I do, just because of the age difference. I full disclosure, I don't own any cryptocurrency, and our firm has. We manage a little bit under 700 million, so we're a pretty good sized firm. I don't know if we have any advisors. I'm not sure our broker dealer would even encourage us to use crypto yet. The key word is yet.
Keyword.
Yeah.
I don't understand crypto well enough. So one of my buddies,
I don't either.
He runs the Whiteboard Finance YouTube channel. Marco, he's Serbian as well, actually. He was born in America though, so it's a little different. But I had him on my podcast, and he's pretty big into it. And he does a lot of videos on it. And he's not like like you have all these jerks on social media just like pushing it, pumping it, etc. he's not like that. He's like genuinely trying to explain it from like, here is the value add of it.
Right.
This percentage of my portfolio is in it, and it's not some it's not like some extravagant percentage. I think it was like I think it's the single digits.
Yeah.
He's dollar cost averaging into it, and he he just sees it as an asset class.
But so the problem that I see is the FOMO. I sit there and I'm on my social media portals, kind of looking at the news, because nobody reads newspapers anymore. So I'm on MSN, things like that. And the first thing I'll see is some Russian oligarch, 17-year-old's worth $20 billion. And I think to myself, I'm trying to understand what value is this article that somebody took time to write about? How is this going to help anybody out there? Why don't you spend time on the average Johnny Lunch Bucket, guy working that is dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin through E-Trade or something? I don't know, just something more relevant than a 18-year-old cryptocurrency billionaire or the Kardashians that I just like. I know why, obviously, because no one wants to hear about Johnny Lunch Bucket buying $50 a month in Bitcoin. I get that. But if we want to start fixing some of these problems, then this fear of missing out is something that we have to rewire. We have to get, the millennials to understand. Like when people will call me on the show and say, well, Jeff, what's your thoughts on the IPO for Twitter? And I said, if you didn't buy Twitter 20 years down the road, are you going to be able to retire successfully? Well, of course I am. Well, then you don't have to buy it.
Yeah.
Or if you do, buy it with money that you can afford losing.
But you're okay with losing.
Yeah, every penny, not half, but all. And if that, and then that's how I answer the question. So we never now, even after this many years, people know better to call our show anymore because we're not going to get lured into that trap to answer that unanswerable question.
Yeah, again, I think it goes back to the concept of like, what is money? Why do you want money? Like, you know what my parents did before we came to America? They had a bunch of cash tens of thousands of marks set aside in our house. And they bought a bunch of gold.
I bet that's so common back then.
And they put it in a safe underground in a bank in Munich, locked it up, and we went to America. And they bought a bunch of gold.
They put it in a safe
at a bank.
Underground at a bank.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
3 keys necessary to open it.
Wow.
Sounds kind of like a medieval novel, like there's a dragon in the cardigan or something.
It does.
But the reason was gold will always be valuable. It's God's money essentially. It's always going to be because it comes out of nature. It has uses, etc.
Yeah.
The question is, what is money? Why do you need money? Why is the FOMO so important? Why are all these different pieces? And to me, in my life, with my wife, my family, and my legacy, money is just a conduit to allow us to do the things we want to do, to help the people we want to be able to help. To, the more problems I solve, the more money I make. It's just kind of how it works. So I do a lot of financial counseling for free to individuals. I had a conversation earlier today with one of my friends, and sometimes I have to have a conversation where I'm like, you've got to figure out a skill set that's going to make you more money, because otherwise you cannot keep living the life you want to live.
Yeah. You
are not an Apple customer.
Right.
You're not. You're a $200 Android customer. Apple is a high-level brand. It's meant for upper middle class, upper class individuals. You don't fall into that. You can't afford it. Go find a skill. Go create a skill. Go to YouTube University. I don't care. Figure out a skill that can compensate you more for the problems you solve. The more value you bring to the table, the more money you'll create, because money is just a direct representation of created value.
So on your podcast, what's the biggest top 2 issues, let's put money aside, that you see in the millennial generation? What are the biggest challenges?
Easy.
I'm limiting it to 2 because you could go on forever.
Easy. Anxiety, depression, and I'll include anxiety and depression together into one, and the lack of identity.
Interesting. Do you think imposter syndrome is a big issue here?
Maybe. I've been chewing on imposter syndrome in general to try to really understand it more in depth. So I don't know if I can answer that, honestly. That's something I've been chewing on, try to understand just in general.
I'm just writing some notes here. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I think a lot of it just in general has to do with the fact that people feel like they've got no purpose. Like life is relatively easy in 2021 compared to, I don't know, 1921 or 1821 or whatever.
Right.
So what's your purpose? Well, now we're really the first human beings in history to have to create our own purpose en masse.
You say we, you mean the millennials?
Well, not even necessarily millennials. I mean, we even talked about on my podcast, like your age group of white men is the number one demographic of suicide.
Isn't that just astounding?
Yeah. So,
it makes sense if you step through it a little bit, but I don't think that's even publicized.
Yeah, I mean, but think about it. 200 years ago, I live in Turkish Bosnia, in Ottoman Bosnia at the time. I'm one of my ancestors. My job is to defend the damn village from raids.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I've got a mission. What's my mission today? I don't have anything built in, nothing inherent. And men in particular want responsibility.
That's interesting. It's like a lost generation.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because when you say built in, I'm thinking to myself, in a way, every generation, I know you're going to be this way with your kids. I was with mine. I kind of want them to have it better than what I had it. And in doing so, becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, they're actually probably less equipping them for the realities of life. And so they become coddled. They become redirected towards the wrong things, like a grade point average is more important than your ability to be a good human, to socialize and to have conversations, I don't know. I think there's some things here you're onto that I think on your show you're going to be opening up a lot of these doors for conversation. The anxiety, depression, and lack of identity, those are big things, and they cause a lot of problems. They cause alcoholism. They cause suicide. Obviously, I mean, when I say the white middle-aged man is the highest year-over-year increase, I think all the areas are increasing. I think women, I know for even homosexuals, homosexual teenagers are
committing suicide at scary rates.
Is 4 times more likely to kill themselves. So a 15-year-old boy or girl that's just questioning their sexuality, which on the spectrum of things just really isn't that big a frickin' deal. But society makes it, or your religion makes it a really big deal. You're not allowed to even have these thoughts. And so they're like, man, I can't tell my parents because they have to go to church. And if I tell my parents, then maybe they'll get kicked out of church, and then maybe I need to be fixed. Maybe it's a phase. Maybe it's poison ivy, and I'll just put some medicine on it, it'll go away. And I'm like, no, maybe it's you. Maybe it's who you are. Somebody needs to invest in that.
Well,
right?
And it may be who you are. It may be a phase. It may be questioning. It may be whatever.
Right.
But you need to have the freedom to not be afraid to, and it can be sexuality, but it can be a million other things, to confront whatever it is that is staring you in the face.
Well, I'm not sure if I told you this, but my youngest son came out as gay. Did I tell you that?
You did.
Yeah,
we didn't get to it on my podcast, but you did.
It was a great learning experience for me as a dad, because when he asked me to talk, I just thought it was, 16-year-old boy stuff, And he had a girlfriend, and I just don't think he realized that was what he was attracted to. And when he told me, and it sounds selfish or stupid to say this, but my first inclination was it was a phase. Like, you'll outgrow this. You'll become a man. You'll realize that this is just not who you are. But man, so quickly, when the words came out of my mouth, I thought, man, Jeff, you just effed this up horribly, dude. You just had a great opportunity here to really listen to your son. And the next time he has something to come talk to you about, he probably won't come talk to you because you shut him down. And I learned from that, and I did a blog on it, and then I decided how to do a podcast. I had my son on here for an hour, and we did a podcast. It wasn't to flaunt or to rub it in people's faces. It was to open up this for parents to be able to have these conversations and give your kids you don't want your kid to be afraid to talk to you about any topic whatsoever. If they can't talk to you, who are they going to go talk to?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, and but I think that's so important. And that's why I tell people, I told you this before we recorded, like if we can impact one person positively with this recording, we've done our job.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times people have reached out to me and be like, oh man, I thought I was the only one struggling with that after an episode. And they hear somebody else talk about it. They're like, oh crap, I'm not the only one. And it's like, yeah, that was the whole point. And you know, I think just us as humans, we're so complex and we have so many different ways our life can go. I mean, life in itself, think about this. This blows my mind all the time. Out of all the human beings that have ever existed, and out of all the human beings that will ever exist, so forward and back, right now at this very moment on what? May 28th, 2021, you and I, Jeff and Jovica, it is our turn to exist on that spectrum.
Right.
And to live life and to figure it out, and we're having a conversation.
Right.
Out of everybody that's ever lived and anybody that will ever live, right now it's our turn. How special is that?
Yeah. And people don't look at it that way. They
It's
squander it with trivial things, and they squander it with lack of awareness, you know, and lack of gratitude, you know.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Have you seen the picture of the pale blue dot?
Oh, yes. The
Voyager took, I think it was 1990. Carl
the picture
Sagan
of the Earth.
Carl Sagan suggested that they turn it around and take a picture as it went off. And you look at that and you see the vastness, and you see this little tiny speck, and you think every single human emotion, every single human, every I love you, every funeral, everything that's been anger, every possible emotion is on that little blue speck floating out there. It just, if you don't look at that picture and say that's the most awe-inspiring thing I've ever seen in my life, I'm not sure what you're looking at that would be more awe-inspiring than seeing the pale blue dot. And I'm writing a blog right now called The Humility of Humanity. And I open with the pale blue dot as my opening sentence, just to put it in frame that, you know, we have this bubble that we walk around with, thinking that things are so important, and that when somebody cuts me off, I flip them off, or something happens during my day, and we just over magnify the real importance of even our lives, even just us, but the things that happen. And you see the earth there from a distance, and you're like, man, we aren't as big a deal as we want to give ourselves, you know? And that's where the gratitude for me comes into play. That's where I'm going with this.
Well, I'm going off of the Stoics, the Ryan Holiday book, Ego is the Enemy.
Absolutely. Great book.
The antithesis of ego is humility. Why do you think, say what you want about religion, whoever you are listening, but why do you think every religion really, really puts a focus on humility?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a consistent human truth. The reason it keeps coming up is because human beings all across the world figured out that, hey, humility is a key to self-realization, because you're not that important, because our ancestors didn't have light pollution. They could look up at the night sky and see all the stars and be like, holy crap, we are nothing.
Right. And look what your mom and dad at the time they were 40, what they were grateful for. Mm-hmm. And then look at me at 55, what I'm grateful for. Then look at what my kids at 20 are grateful for. Quite a bit of a difference. Yeah. You know?
There is, but it's so beautiful that all of us have these different experiences, because it is just, again, the simple fact. Think about this. For you to be born, okay? We're going to go into biology. The average man, per sexual intercourse, produces about 300 million sperms. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's about the equivalent of the population of the United States of America.
Oh, that's crazy.
For that sperm to get to an egg, it is the equivalent of you walking from Los Angeles to Seattle. So
That's
300
crazy.
million start, each one of them a different possible combination of a human being.
Wow.
And one of them, sometimes two, but one of them makes it to Seattle, makes it to the egg.
Wow.
Think about the odds of that for you to be created.
How special you are.
And then nothing to go wrong during the actual
Right.
development.
Right.
And then you have to survive your first year, where most humans died in history is the first year.
Right.
And then you got to get to become an adult, and somehow you're supposed to like self-actualize and realize that like, oh, what's going on in the world. I mean, when you break it down like that, you're like, the odds of that happening and me being around are just so special.
And then we get a podcast.
Correct.
That's how it ends, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Have a good night.
Yeah, I don't really know where I was going with all that.
Yeah,
but
I can't top you going to Seattle and all that. That story is pretty good. I've never heard it presented that way. That's
I remember I
that
learned
does
that.
if that doesn't demonstrate really how special you are, I don't know what would.
Yeah.
That's even more unique than the pale blue dot analogy I used, or the metaphor, is that to get to even where you and I are, all the things that had to go our way to get here, and for us not to be grateful. That's why impermanence is a beautiful concept. Mm-hmm. Because my son the other day was down here. We were talking about some issue he had in his relationship, and I said, the greatest thing about what you're going through, Roman? He said, what? And I said, it's impermanent. And I don't think he really understood. And I said, that pit you have in the stomach, that sick feeling you have, it doesn't last forever. And that's what impermanence is. It's the idea of things die or end. So even the best of times are impermanent. The worst of times are impermanent. So when someone says nothing lasts forever, they really mean both good and bad times. And if you're aware of that, then when you have the best of times, you can sit back and see that baby that you just created, and you can hold it and have that great feeling, the best of times. And then the counter can happen. I'm sitting there looking at the urn of my son who died of a heroin overdose, which would be the worst of times. But I have respect and awe of death as much as I have love and gratitude for life, And again, that didn't happen overnight. It took me to go through some deep places in my life that I talk about, the abyss in my book, laying with my back, and you've been there. I think it's hard to get to where you are in your life. I know you're younger than me, but without having some challenges that would equate to your abyss. My abyss is my abyss. Your abyss is your abyss, but they're both abysses. They both suck. It doesn't mean one's better or worse than the other. I am intrigued by all that. I think that's gratitude, humility, love, empathy, compassion. Those are words, I think, like the millennial. You talked about anxiety, depression, lack of identity. Those are all words that generation, and for all my generation too, could definitely learn from.
Well, and I think one of the beautiful things. So the Greeks have a saying that I really like. They basically say, "No one is truly dead as long as somebody remembers them." And I think that's so.
The Greeks said that, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
I think that's so incredibly powerful in the sense that. So I'm from a religious standpoint, I'm Greek Orthodox, and I remember I listened to a priest talk about, death, and he was talking about how his grandson, or not his son. So by the way, Orthodox priests are married, so that's why this priest is talking about his son. The priest's father passed away, and his son was asking him. He was saying, will we get to see, what happens after? Do we get to see Grandpa again? And the priest said, you loved your grandfather. You love your grandfather, right? And his son said yes. And he says, did you notice how it didn't say you loved your grandfather? And he said, that love doesn't disappear ever.
Right.
And you can't take away the love that your grandfather had for you or for I or for any of us. Mm-hmm. That energy stays around forever. So yes, we will be together forever. And it was, in Orthodox theology, we tend to be a little more cautious about what is said from a theological standpoint. There's a lot more mystery than there is definitive statements.
I would say that's true for sure.
So the mystery of God is respected and honored significantly more than in Western Christianity.
Which they provide answers. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really appreciated that statement because it made so much sense to me when I heard that. I was like, yeah, my grandfather, one of them died in 1999, one of them died in 2002 or 3. I didn't love them. I love them still.
Well, I know exactly what you're talking about. 100%.
Yeah, your son. You didn't stop loving your son. You still love your son.
Actually, last night on LinkedIn, maybe you saw it. I know we follow each other, but we're so busy in so many conversations. ADD and LinkedIn can be a problem sometimes. But somebody posted something with a penny with a little thing of fentanyl next to it. And her name's Amy Olseth, I think. She's awesome. And she was commenting that that's all the amount of fentanyl it takes to, the size of Abe Lincoln's nose, would kill anybody. And so immediately, I thought of my son. I posted a picture of my son, and I said, it's shocking to think that that's how much it took to take Seth. I love you, Seth, etc. And very short. I didn't want to be dramatic. Most people following know my story. I don't need to beat him up with it. Well, she then kind of apologized. She kind of said, well, I'm sorry if I triggered. And I immediately thought, she didn't trigger me. Because triggering would mean that I'm bringing up an emotion that's causing me to go backwards. But Seth is alive to me. I can't explain it. And you said something that I couldn't agree more, and it's in my book. Seth truly dies when I stop talking about him. I say those words. And I didn't know that was a Greek phrase. I just have absorbed it over the years, and I could have read it in a Stoic book. Very likely I did. But where I'm going with this is that when she made that statement, the assumption was that my comment only could have been because I was triggered. Well, no, you can't trigger me. I talk and think about Seth every frickin' moment of every day. You can't already trigger me. It's like I'm going to trigger you to breathe.
Yeah.
I'm untriggerable. But I understand her concern. She may have thought I'm one of the ones that find ways to wallow in misery and so forth. And I don't. I talk about Seth. I chase him. He is one of my 3 boys. And
he always will be. It's impossible for him not to be.
Absolutely. And some people can't understand that because I think there's more of us, members of that club, that have lost a child that haven't got figured out a way to, as I say, honor the dead, live for the living. I mean, that's probably a Stoic quote at some point. And I honor Seth, but I'm not living for Seth. I'm living in honor of him. I'm living for my 2 boys right now. I'm living for you right now. I'm living for my ex-wife. I'm living for my parents. I'm not living for Seth. He's not here. I'm honoring him. You follow me on that? I don't know if that. No. It's hard for me to maybe articulate that to some people, but I have a feeling you grasp it. For some people can't.
There's so many interesting rabbit holes to go down there. One of the things that I find really interesting about American culture that bothers me, and I think it comes from the puritanical roots of America and some of the theology behind that of the early settlers, is the complete disregard for the dead that I feel American culture has. Visiting cemeteries is not really a thing culturally.
It used to be. My parents used to take us to see our grandparents, but...
Really?
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody who was doing some cleanup work for their family plot in a rural cemetery, and he was kind of just complaining about how that's kind of a waste of time. And I don't think he meant it in a negative way. I know he didn't, but just again from a cultural standpoint.
Why do you think this is? I think you hit on something there.
I mean, part of it, again, part of that puritanical theology of Calvinism and Anabaptists and early settlers is like this life is kind of like just a stop along the way, and what you really trying to get to is the afterlife. So you kind of disregard this life. I'm really grasping there because I'm trying to work through in my head what it could be, but I don't know. Maybe like I have a friend who passed away tragically in a car wreck in 2016. He was one of my best friends. I go visit his grave 3 or 4 times a year. I go take flowers and I sit down next to him and we just chat.
Absolutely.
And I've had other friends who were really close to him that I invited, and they never take me up on that offer. And I'm like, why not? Why not like go to the one thing that we have that honors the fact publicly that this man lived at one point?
You think it's too painful?
I don't know. I just like, to me, it's not weird in Yugoslavian culture. You do that all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. To me, I just grew up doing it secondhand.
Right.
So I don't know. Again, I might also be just projecting my experiences of, Nashville, Tennessee, and the people that I'm surrounded by. We might go to Maine, and people listening there are like, "What the hell is this Jovica guy talking about?"
It'd be so easy for me to just accept claims that Seth is in a better place. It would be so comforting to think that our son is, up there playing with our pets that we put down a few years back, and my great-grandparents that died, and another friend's son committed suicide. It's easy to think, or not easy, it's more comforting to think that that's what is really happening. Yet, for Jeff Johnston, that doesn't work. I am not comfortable. I don't need the assertion or claim that I know anything, because I simply don't. And I'm not comfortable, I don't want to say lying to myself, but I'm not comfortable in telling myself a story that I simply don't have enough evidence that I believe there even is an afterlife.
Do you dismiss it though completely, or do you?
I struggle with this so much, Jovica, that I'm not really sure even how to say it. And sometimes the fact that we have to language makes feelings difficult, because we feel like in order to explain something, we have to have a language. That's why just the concept of awe and beauty, when people have a transcendent experience, sometimes they come back out of that and they struggle with trying to find words. And so they just come up with a word, a bright light, so people can understand. Well, sometimes there's just things you can't put words onto. And I'm not sure where I got off on that whole thing, but in regards to, the ability to deal with Seth's death, I've accepted the fact that I don't know where he is. And if you believe in all the laws of what thermodynamics and energy is never created and destroyed, all that stuff, if that is a truth, then his energy is somewhere. And maybe part of my missions with Living Undeterred and the book and talking to people like you and gathering data is maybe my journey on my life is to try to find out where he is. But I know I probably never will find out. I want to believe that if I die, I meet him, I see him again someday. But I don't torture myself with, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I'm very comfortable not knowing. It doesn't affect me adversely at all to tell myself I don't know where he is. It doesn't bother me. It would bother me more if I created a story just so I could sleep better at night. That would bother me more personally. For me, I would be very uncomfortable that I wasn't authentic with myself. Now, is it right or wrong? I don't have any idea. I sleep well. I've never been depressed after Seth died. I was had depressive moments. I think you and I talked about. I thought about suicide, but I wouldn't consider that depression, because my depressive moments were very short and intense, but they went away. So is my grieving process better? It's unique to me, as is yours.
Yeah,
I know it's not even a question I think I threw out there. It's more of letting you kind of go inside my brain to figure out how I think things through.
Yeah, and some people need to, like, they need, like when people say, I know this happens after I die, like typically very religious people. And I never argue with those people because, one, I'm not interested in arguing with them. Two, like, if that's what you need and you truly believe it, to keep you out of the anxiety of being the only creatures on earth that know that one day we're going to die, God bless you.
Hey, I agree, 100%.
Like
100%.
Like 100%. The fact that we are aware of the fact that we are going to die, and the fact that we don't live in a constant state of anxiety just about that fact is a miracle.
Yeah, so, I would agree.
I mean, again, personally, I do believe in God. I do believe in the energies of God, the power of God, the theology of the Orthodox Church in a lot of ways, and the salvific process that we would call theosis. Do I try to convince others of it? No, I cannot care less to convince others of it. It gives me hope in the sense of, because it's an active process of the deification of the soul to become more Christ-like every single day that I live. So can I be a human that loves others? Can I be somebody who shows compassion? Can I be somebody who turns the other cheek? Can I be, somebody who goes out of my way to help? And can I get better at that every single day, as long as I live and after that? And whatever happens after I take my last breath happens. And
is what the beauty is of, and in my case, I'm agnostic, but you and I both can do good. We can live good lives. We can live inspired lives as a believer or non-believer. And most of my friends are believers. Most of them happen to be Christians. I don't have a ton of Catholic friends, but I have mostly Christian friends. They pray for me. They do all these things. I accept everything from everybody because, again, I'm at a point in my grieving process where I'm only less than 5 years into bearing a child. I need help. I need all the arrows in my quiver that I could possibly get. I'll take God. I'll take anything I can get. But you and I both are similar to a lot of people in that it doesn't matter what you believe. It's more important how you behave.
100%.
And I could tattoo that on my forehead because people go around telling me what they believe, and I'm like, okay, that's great, but what do you actually do? What do you bring to the table other than your ideology or your thoughts or opinions? What are you doing in action? Are you being a good dad? Are you being a good husband? Are you being a good business owner? Are you being a good podcast host? Are you writing good content? Are you creating? Are you solving people's problems as you're solving your own? You believe in God or don't, like you just said, I don't really care. But if you're an asshole and you're an atheist, then I care. If you're an asshole Christian, I care, And I think the behavior thing at 55 years old is much more important to me than what people believe anymore. I used to care if you were Democrat, Republican, all that stuff in my 20s was a big deal, apparently. Now I realize how much just wasted time I spent and even just wasted good relationships I probably could have harvested. Now I'm really enjoying meeting people of all flavors now. I love it.
It's so amazing how much people crave certainty because life is so uncertain. How much people crave certainty. And that's something that I've been coming to terms with more and more as older I've gotten, is just accepting uncertainty.
It's hard to do.
Well,
we're not wired as humans, we just aren't.
Yeah. I did a podcast called America, We're in Trouble, January 7th, 2021, the day after the Capitol storming. And I ended it
I'm going to go listen to it. January 7th?
Yeah, it's 13 minutes. It's not even long. I was just so pissed off after that. And I said, at the end of it, maybe, just maybe, take a second and ask yourself if the other side is right, whatever side you're on, or if there's a possibility that the other side is right, because maybe, just maybe, you're the one who's wrong.
What do you think the response was, or what response did you get?
Overwhelmingly positive. Overwhelmingly.
Oh, interesting.
Positive.
So people.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like here's the deal. Here's the deal. In order for you to storm the U.S. Capitol, forget what side you are on politically. Forget all that. I'm just saying, just for you to get to a point where you are ready to storm the Capitol of the United States of America,
it could get shot. Yeah.
Yeah. You have not considered whether or not the other side is right.
Good point.
There's no way in hell you've considered it, because if you did, that is such an extreme action to take. There's no way.
Yeah, I want to listen to this 13 minutes, yeah,
it might even be shorter. I was literally just pissed off. I turned on the mic and I said, "What in the actual hell is wrong with the people in this country?" I don't give a shit if it's Republican, Democrat, Martian. It doesn't matter.
Nobody cared. I think at the time when I saw people climbing over the Capitol stairs, I didn't care anymore. It was more about just the safety of the people there, and
and our society. We live in a country that needs to have some functioning, basically moral code that we all agree to. We respect the institutions that exist because they allow for us to live in a safe society. The only reason we have government is because if we didn't have government, I would constantly have to shoot people trying to take my house from me.
Right.
We have property law because that's easier and safer than me defending my shit with a shotgun.
Have you heard of the book? Did I tell you this when I was on your show? I don't remember the author, but it's a book called Mental Immunity.
Yes, we talked about that. We both listened to the Joe Rogan episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've talked about the book frequently. I haven't listened to it yet, but I just got it on audiobook. But I like the concept of mind parasites because I have to think everybody climbing the Capitol stairs wearing Viking hats and flags and, would look like, what you would see in an insane asylum, 100 years ago if you could sneak in a camcorder. Just people running around amok, causing problems. And I have to think a lot of those people are just having infected viruses that they've poisoned themselves from too much of confirmation bias. I'm mad at the government, so all I'm going to do all day is watch stories on conspiracies and certain radios, TV stations, and just confirm and just build on that anger to the point, like you said, now they're not thinking logically. And I think that's what the author in this mental immunity is about, teaching us to build immunities like we do to fight off the flu and to fight off diseases. We build up immunities in our body, but I don't think we do a good job as a society building up immunities in our brain.
Well, can I interject real quick?
Absolutely.
It doesn't help that the government doesn't help themselves in this case. For example, they've lied to us about literally everything. Everything. Think about this. In the Kennedy administration, the Joint Chiefs of Staff literally planned to shoot down a U.S. airliner, killing everybody on it and blaming the Cubans for it so we could invade Cuba. And the Joint Chiefs of Staff signed off on it, and the person that vetoed that plan was John F. Kennedy himself. Think about that for a second. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is declassified U.S. documents.
Right.
So your government was willing to kill its own citizens in order to have an excuse to invade Cuba.
Well, look at Iran-Contra,
Iran-Contra.
Right.
For the love of God, the war in Iraq.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear shit. I don't want to hear a damn thing from anybody in the media. Oprah, sit your ass down. You sold that shit to the American public that killed 1 million Iraqis and God knows how many American soldiers, kids who were sent over there for this crazy-ass war.
I get it. I see your passion, man. And I think as a naive American sometimes, and I profess that can be me and probably most people I know because we were born and bred here, that we are kind of oblivious until you travel overseas, what it's really like outside of the protected confines of our country, especially where you grew up in your youth before you were 10. Do you ever go back?
I do. The last time I was back was 2017, but I do want to finish the last. The last point real quick.
Yeah.
So when you have things like that, it's not that far of a stretch to get to the crap that people were believing who stormed the Capitol.
No, I understand.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. Yep.
I mean,
You can connect the dots pretty easily there.
Pretty freaking easily, because the sad reality is, the thing we probably don't want to admit to ourselves. Okay, look, I do not think that the elites are eating baby blood or whatever the hell QAnon believes. But I guarantee you there's bits and pieces of the conspiracy theories that these people buy into that are true.
Well, every conspiracy theory has
Correct.
some bits and pieces. Every had one person that everyone knows that had a soundbite and people run with it. Like right now, the UFO thing, I'm very interested in seeing the Pentagon coming out. Exactly, because there are pieces of that are true. The fighter pilot saw something odd. Well, doesn't mean it's out of the earth. It doesn't mean that it's not advanced technology that we made here that we're just experimenting with. But people take that one video of something pivoting up there by a fighter pilot 15 years ago as proof.
Yep.
And so I see you're right. You're definitely right. Things can be taken to extremes, and that's what fuels conspiracy theories in general.
Well, and like you said, those mind parasites. And I'll answer your question that you asked before I finish my thought. But has Bosnia changed a lot?
Yeah.
Yes and no. There's just a lot of deeper issues. It's essentially it's essentially an economic and political colony. It doesn't really function as its own state. The wars essentially were never resolved. So I feel bad for the people who don't see a way out. I feel bad for the people who lost loved ones. And I try to help as much as I can in different ways. It's just, but then again, when you compare Bosnia to like some random country in Africa or Southeast Asia, I mean, they're living like kings. You know what I mean? Like, so it's all relative. Like, right. Compared to the standard of living in the United States, you're like, oh no, the poverty. But then compared to the standard of living in Sri Lanka, you're like, oh my God, the wealth.
And that's, I heard someone say something about the birth lottery idea,
Mm-hmm. Lucky sperm
sometimes club. Just by the luck of the draw, I was born, I had a lot of advantages being white, male born in Iowa. I think your birth lottery, was a little bit more of a struggle than mine. I don't know. I would say I'm not making light of it, but
I had a pretty damn good birth lottery.
Did you? Good.
I mean, I come from my family was relatively wealthy. My family owned a lot of land. My dad was educated. I mean, it's birth lottery that my dad and my family were like, yeah, we're not doing this shit. Like all the rabble rousing and all the brainwashing to where you hate your neighbor. Like, screw you. I'm not doing that. To me, that's a birth lottery. I mean, I tell people all the time. I tell my wife all the time. I had an incredible childhood. Unbelievable. I would not trade my childhood with anybody.
Let me throw this at you because I think you're just wired to be an optimistic person. I
do have a positivity bias. That is for sure.
Do you think somebody else that went through your same first 5-10 years of life may now look back and just have anger and just issues and hatred and just you were able to take, and that's why I think you're probably in a positive way. Like sometimes I'm accused of being Teflon. My brother called me that one time in a positive way. It's like, geez, Jeff, do you ever like, yes, I do. I don't tell people about it. But you seem to be wired like me a little bit from that standpoint, is that I think you're just an optimistic person. I mean, you're passionate, but you're also very optimistic. I think it would be interesting to see if someone could live the first 15 years of your life and if they'd have the same outlook, coming over here from Germany and being planted in a different country and having to learn a new language, things that I never had to do.
Probably. I mean, again, I just had such good parents.
And that's the key. I think that's what I'm learning about this. That's the key. Your parents sound awesome.
Yeah, my parents, they are awesome. I mean, again, they have flaws. Like my dad is like old man stubborn, pisses me off every single day. Like, shut the hell up and go to the doctor.
Now, how old are they right now? How old are your parents?
My dad's 60. My mom's 55, 56.
Your dad's 60?
Yes.
And I'm 55.
Yeah, you could be my dad.
I could almost be your dad. My dad's 87.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 31. It's not unreasonable. You would have had me at what, 24, 25?
Well, Seth would have been 27 this year.
Yeah, so it's not that. I mean, Seth and I went to school, like, we were in high school at the same time.
That's crazy.
I was probably a senior. He was a freshman. So, yeah, it's not unreasonable.
That's crazy. Well, you've done a lot in a short amount of time so far, man.
I try to, man. You're selling financial services for 10 years. Age you. God, man. It's like, you want to talk about a difficult job. So, yeah, man, I'm really marinating on that question. Would somebody else be?
Yeah, I'm just curious because you seem so optimistic.
I do have a positivity bias for sure, except for when it comes to money. I am ruthlessly pragmatic when it comes to money. Like, I will look at an investment every which way before I pull the trigger, because I like money. Like,
Yeah.
I've not
and
had
losses, as you know, losses way more than gains feel good.
money. Correct.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think my parents are relatively positive people overall. You kind of have to be, considering what they've been through. Yeah, I don't know if you would believe it or not, but like, when I was a kid, it didn't even click to me that we were neither poor nor refugees. Like, we were just, I never remember as a child, like, our family being unhappy.
That's interesting, because it is what it is. You didn't have anything to compare it to like you do now.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm so much luckier than the kids who didn't get out. I have cousins who didn't get out.
Yeah.
All of them. Like, my dad was trying to beg people to leave with him, and they wouldn't, because they were so damn brainwashed into the bullshit. And all of them I've watched as adults tell my dad he was right, and he's like, I know I was right. He doesn't even hide it. He's like, yeah, no shit. I told you what was going to happen.
Can I throw out something? This is an hour and 16, and you and I talked for like an hour and 15 on your show. I just enjoy talking with you, man. I'm very happy that we met. I enjoy our friendship, and I'm going to throw an offer out that I do a live stream now. I'm on my third live stream, and I'm going to throw out to have you be a guest, because I think your breadth of different things that you've been exposed to could add. My goal at the live stream is to bring on 2 guests for like an hour and a half, and just kind of a no holds bar, just go down roads, open up doors, no agenda. And the first one I had was 2 hours, and I had 4 guests, and it was so much fun. Matter of fact, when I got done, I told my boys that was one of the most fun nights of my life. And then the second one I did, I had 2 guests. I had Antarctic Mike on and Brian Wall, and that was last Thursday, and that was just freaking awesome. And I got my next one planned for next Thursday, but I'm looking for always teeing up down the road. But I want to just throw an invitation out to have you as a guest on my live stream.
I love having conversation, and we've got a good flow, and
you're easy to talk to. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I try not to be. I'm also aware I can sound like a pretentious douchebag when I'm thinking, because I'm trying to. I actively try to work through problems out loud. Like, I'll argue with myself. My wife's like, "Okay, what are you arguing about now?" Because she I talk with my hands a lot, and we'll be driving, and she's like taking a nap, and she looks over, and I'm having a full conversation with myself.
I do too.
And she's like, "Well, what are you arguing with yourself about now?" And I'm like, "Well, would it be better to do X or Y?" And like, I'm playing, I'm.
Who are you talking to? Are you on your phone? No, I'm talking to me.
yeah. It's I want to work through problems. I love discourse. I love conversation. And again, if I can say something, because I know it's happened to me a million times listening to others, but if I can say something that triggers somebody to think about something they haven't thought about and maybe solve that problem, that's awesome. Well,
listen, I've enjoyed this thoroughly. Few seconds, few minutes, however you want to take. How do people find you? How do they like, subscribe? What can they do to support what you're doing, your Millennial Manhood cause that you're on?
Okay. Millennial Manhood, anywhere you get podcasts, literally anywhere, Millennial Manhood. You can also go to manhoodpod.com. All the episodes are on there. You can check me out on LinkedIn. I'm sure my name will be in the description for this podcast. So if you just look me up, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. You'll see me. I'm an employee benefits broker, consultant. ASAP Yavi, so ASAP_JOVI on Instagram. And that's basically it. Like, I'm always willing to talk to folks and connect with folks. And whether it's on a podcast standpoint, a business standpoint, or just want to chat. I mean, go to town, reach out. I'm an open book.
Well, I know our paths will cross many times now that this door has been cracked open. I thoroughly enjoyed this. So Jovica, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. You coming on today and your time that you've taken. And I tell people at the end of every episode to live undeterred, but I think for you, it just comes naturally. So
I appreciate
it. I am going to tell you to keep living undeterred. Go see your family, enjoy your weekend, have a great Memorial Day. And again, thanks a lot. And for anybody that would like to support my cause, I'm to remind you from my producer, Molly Nordlaken, to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's probably the biggest thing you can do. Go to livingundeterred.com. That's the website. Go to YouTube, just put in Living Undeterred. And Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the normal platforms we are on now. And support us, like us, rate us, share it. And together, Jovica and I can try to see if we can, in the middle of trying to help each other, we can help others. And that's what we're setting out to do. So again, with that, I want to end the show. And thank you very much for your time. Have a great weekend and live undeterred.